Welcome to NFL Nexus. So the Philadelphia Eagles, wow, are they at a pivotal moment or what? After a 2025 season that honestly started with so much promise, but ended in a just stunning first-round playoff exit, the front office is staring down a series of decisions that are going to define everything. We're not just talking about the 2026 season, we're talking about the whole identity of this team for years to come. In this explainer, we're going to break down the massive crossroads they're facing. Hey, if you're a fan of digging deep into the NFL like this, do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps us out. Okay, let's get into this. Every offseason has its big moves, right? A key signing here, a crucial draft pick there. But for the Eagles, heading into 2026, it just feels different. The entire chessboard, every single move that comes after, it all hinges on the future of one player. This isn't just about adding a piece to the puzzle. It's about deciding what the puzzle's even supposed to look like. Are you going to build around this dominant, sometimes demanding superstar, or do you pivot and prioritize scheme and maybe a more balanced culture? That is the fundamental question they have to answer. All right, before we can look ahead, we have to understand how we even got here. And man, the 2025 season was a roller coaster in every sense of the word. They kicked off the year looking like a legit Super Bowl contender. The offense was just humming. But then, the collapse. A string of losses that just made you scratch your head, with the offense stalling out and the defense just breaking down. It was a year of incredible highs, some truly baffling lows, and this constant feeling of drama just bubbling under the surface. It all ended with a super frustrating exit in the wildcard round, leaving a roster loaded with talent but with way more questions than answers. Something very clearly has to change. And that brings us right to the epicenter of this entire offseason. Seriously, any conversation you have about the Eagles starts and ends with their number one wide receiver, A.J. Brown. We are talking about a guy who has been nothing short of historic since he put on an Eagles uniform. He's arguably the best, most physically dominant receiver the franchise has ever had. And yet, his name is constantly swirling in trade rumors. And look, this isn't just sports radio chatter. It comes from very real, very public frustrations that have created this massive question mark hanging over the whole team. So let's just put it right out there, because it's the question that analysts, especially over at ESPN, have pointed to as the single biggest issue for the Eagles. What in the world do they do with A.J. Brown? Do you really trade arguably your most dynamic, game-changing offensive weapon, a guy who can literally win you a game by himself, or do you find a way, any way, to make it work? The answer to this question is the first domino. Everything else we're about to talk about falls into place after this. Drop a comment right now. I want to know what you think they should do. And this quote right here from Tim McManus at ESPN, it just perfectly captures the problem. This wasn't some behind-the-scenes rumor. Brown's frustrations were visible. We all saw them during that late-season collapse. So for the front office, the worry isn't just about managing a big personality. The real concern is whether that friction, that frustration, is actively hurting the team's performance on the field. They have to ask themselves, can we fix this? Or is it better to just cut our losses, get a huge return in a trade, and kind of reset the whole vibe in that locker room? But then you have this. These are A.J. Brown's own words, and they paint a totally different picture, don't they? This doesn't sound like a guy who's trying to force his way out of town. He calls Philadelphia home. He talks about loving the city, loving the fans. And that's the core of the dilemma, right? On one hand, you have all this documented frustration. On the other, you have this heartfelt commitment. And general manager Howie Roseman has to figure out which one of these two things is the real story moving forward. And see, the A.J. Brown situation bleeds directly into this next big problem. Because let's say they keep him. Let's say they keep his massive contract on the books. Well, now the team's focus has to immediately pivot to its own guys, a long list of key players who are about to hit free agency. With only so much money to go around, you just can't keep everybody. So the question becomes, who's the priority? Who is absolutely non-negotiable for this team to bring back? And yeah, look at the challenge Howie Roseman's staring at. This is not some short list of role players. It's packed with starters and huge contributors. You got your starting tight end, Dallas Goedert, who's a critical safety blanket for the offense. You've got a key pass rusher in Jalen Phillips. They desperately need his energy. Then there's your starting middle linebacker, Nakobe Dean, and a key safety in Reed Blankenship. And we haven't even mentioned a franchise legend and the heart and soul of that locker room, Brandon Graham, or a very capable backup QB in Sam Howell. Every single name on this list is a tough and probably expensive decision. So where do you even start?
this table kind of breaks down the debate perfectly. On one side, you have an analyst from CBS Sports making a really interesting case for linebacker Nakobe Dean. He's young, he's a fantastic blitzer, and, his injury history might actually bring his price down a bit, making him a value signing. Plus, let's be real, this front office loves guys from that Georgia Bulldogs dynasty. But then you look at the other side, and you have just pure, glaring roster needs. If Dallas Goedert walks out the door, who is your long-term tight end? There's no one. If Jalen Phillips leaves, your pass rush takes a massive step back. You could argue those are just bigger, more immediate fires to put out. Okay, so whether they trade Brown and suddenly have a bunch of cash to spend, or they keep him and have to shop in the bargain aisle, the Eagles have to be smart in free agency. This is where we get into what one source calls sneaky good signings. Now, these aren't the biggest, flashiest names out there, but they are guys who could fill very specific needs and, this is key, have direct connections to the Eagles' new coaches, which would make their transition super smooth. Speaking of a seamless fit, a quick word from us. If you're looking for a great gift for the young NFL fan in your life, you can help support the channel by checking out our new line of coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, and hey, even adults. You can find them using the link in the description.
All right, let's dive into the first potential target here, Green Bay receiver Romeo Doubs. You see his name linked to the Eagles constantly, and there's a really good reason why. His deep history with their new offensive coordinator, who just came over from the Packers. This isn't just a random name, it's a logical, targeted fit that makes a ton of sense. When you look at his profile, you see exactly why he's a fit. He was productive in the new OC system, putting up really solid numbers last season. He's not going to blow you away with his speed, but he's a tough, physical receiver with great body control who just lives for those contested catches. But his real value here? He's the ultimate contingency plan. If, and it's a big if, A.J. Brown gets traded, signing a guy like Doubs who already knows the playbook inside and out, well, that becomes an incredibly smart move to make sure Jalen Hurts has a reliable guy he can trust from day one. But it always comes down to the money, right? Spotrac projects that Doubs is going to get about $12 million a year. Now, you might see that and think, whoa, that's a little steep for a number 2 receiver behind Brown and Devonta Smith. And you'd be right. But what if Brown is traded? What if his massive contract is suddenly off the books? All of a sudden, $12 million for a guy you can plug in as your number 1 or 2 option who already knows the system? That starts to look pretty reasonable. See how this number is tied directly to that first big decision? Okay, let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball for our second target, cornerback Josh Jobe. And what's really interesting about this one is that it would be a reunion. Jobe is a former developmental guy for the Eagles. They spent years trying to develop him before he was eventually waived and ended up somewhere else. And this is a classic the one that got away story. After leaving Philly, Jobe goes to Seattle and just blows up in 2025, becoming a regular starter for them. He started 15 games, put up some really impressive stats, especially those 12 passes defensed. It's the exact situation that front offices hate, right? The Eagles put in all the time and gave him a roster spot, only to watch him become a legitimate starter for another team. Bringing him back would add some much-needed quality depth to what is still a very young secondary. His projected market value is coming in just under $10 million a year. Look, for a starting caliber corner who's still young and already knows the building and the organization, that's a price the Eagles could probably stomach. It's a move that feels very on brand for Howie Roseman, finding value and bringing back guys who have proven themselves elsewhere. All right, our third and final sneaky good target is on the offensive line, the veteran guard Dalton Risner. And just like with Doubs, the key here is the coaching connection. The Eagles have a new offensive line coach, Chris Cooper, and Risner has played for him before. He knows the system. So what makes Risner such a great fit? Well, first off, he's incredibly experienced. We're talking 92 career starts. Second, and this is huge, there are these persistent rumors that guys like Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson might be thinking about retiring. If even one of them does, this offensive line is going to need some veteran stability and fast. Risner provides that. But most importantly, he already knows Coach Cooper's system, his terminology. He'd basically be a coach on the field from the second he walked in the building. That's invaluable for a unit in transition. Now, look at that price tag. A projected AAV of just $2.4 million. For a veteran starter who knows the scheme and can stabilize your O-line through a potential rebuild, that's not just a good deal, that is an absolute steal in today's NFL. This is exactly the kind of smart, under-the-radar signing that smart teams make to fill out a championship-caliber roster. So when you pull the camera back and look at the big picture, the entire landscape of the Eagles offseason just snaps into focus. This isn't about making a dozen separate moves.
It's really about one single central choice that dictates every single thing that comes after it. The team is truly standing at a crossroads with two very, very different paths laid out in front of them. And here they are, the two paths, laid out as simply as possible. Path number 1 is to run it back. This means you keep A.J. Brown, you commit to fixing whatever issues there are, and you bet that his elite talent will win out in the end. You'd use your limited money to try and re-sign your own guys like Goddard or Phillips. Path 2 is a retool. This is the much bolder choice. You trade your superstar for a mountain of draft picks and players, you use all that new cap space to bring in perfect scheme-fit guys like Romeo Doubs, and you fundamentally change the look and feel of your offense. And so we end right back where we started with the question that is just going to hang over Philadelphia until we get an answer. And an offseason that's just packed with tough choices, will GM Howie Roseman's biggest, most impactful move be the one he makes, or maybe the one he chooses not to make? Is he going to double down on his superstar, or is he going to trade him away and bet on a whole new direction? The future of the franchise is literally hanging in the balance. What do you think they'll do? Let us know down in the comments, and hey, don't forget to subscribe to NFL Nexus for more deep dives just like this one. Thanks for watching.